You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network. How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another installment of the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, your March 10th, 2020 edition, your source for North American sports coverage by sports fans, for sports fans, delivered to you right here from the Niagara region. Follow the podcast on Twitter at ArmchairGMPod. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/the Armchair GMs Network. Listen to us live on Spreaker.com or the Spreaker app by searching the Armchair GMs. As well, we are on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Stitcher Radio. So wherever it's most convenient for you to listen to us, we're on all those different platforms for you. And as always, I'm one of your hosts of the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition, Cappy. You can follow me on Twitter at Capoots13 with a Canadian Z. And I'm always joined on the Sabres portion of the network by my co-host, Austin. You can follow him on Twitter at Austin_Broad. He is a contributor for thechargingbuffalo.net. Austin, we won a game in March.
Yeah, we won a game in March. It feels like it's been... Well, we won a game since the trade deadline, too. Like, it was a long time coming, and go figure, it's against the Washington Capitals of all teams.
Yeah, shout-outs to my local gym. It's one of our great sponsors, Simply Fit Health Club. They were actually giving away 2 tickets for this game, throughout the month, and I was just like, oh, man, whoever gets tickets to this game, I hope they're a Washington fan, because it's not going to be good leading up to it. And I was joking around with the owner, saying, like, I'm glad it's against Washington, gives them something to win the tickets for, and the Sabres actually come out and win this game. So Ovi did score in the game, though, but yeah, so the Sabres of all teams, they snapped their losing streak against the Washington Capitals, which you've said multiple times on this podcast about how the Sabres seem to play better against better competition than just play down to really bad teams, it seems like.
Yeah, so it just seems to be a common theme with the Sabres this year. I mean, we're going to go back and recap the games, but even when you look at that 3-1 loss to Philadelphia, when you look at the box score, I mean, Buffalo peppered Carter Hart with a ton of shots, and they actually played a pretty solid game, but the result just didn't go their way, as Ralph Kruger would say. But the last 2 games, they kind of showed that, when everything is clicking, they actually can play with some of the better teams in the league. It's just frustrating that it never gets put together. Yep. On a consistent basis.
No, and we'll definitely talk about that more in a bit. We're going to recap the games against Philadelphia over the weekend and Washington. Obviously, last night, day of recording this is Tuesday. So, and then we're also going to look into the it's actually worked out well just with our schedules and everything that we were able to record this week's episode on the Tuesday when the Sabres play rivalry games against Montreal on Wednesday and Friday this week. So, it's just nice how everything kind of worked out with that. And then we've got post-game audio courtesy of WGR 550 with Ralph Kruger and Jack Eichel from last night as well. And then we will quickly go over a prospects update for some of you Sabres fans out there who love to keep up on how our prospects are developing and how their seasons are going this year outside of Buffalo and Rochester. So that's what the lowdown of the show is going to be today. With that being said, Austin, let's quickly get this over with. The Philadelphia Flyers game. Oh my goodness. This was, from what I watched on the highlights, I couldn't watch this game live as I had Ice Dogs Media to attend to, so I wasn't able to watch this game live, but I did go back and watch the highlights. And all that runs through my head is the third goal where Carter Hutton. We had Carter versus Carter in this game in net, by the way. Yeah. Carter Hutton receives the puck from Ristolainen, and instead of going to his forehand to kind of just shove it around the other side of the net, he tries to keep it on his backhand for whatever reason, and I don't know what he was thinking of trying to do with this puck, but it ends up getting just punched into the net by, I believe, Joel Farabee for one of the sloppiest, worst goals the Sabres have given up all year.
Yeah, I don't really... Again, this is going to come off as, I know people like to bash Ristolainen, and this isn't a bash on Ristolainen. I don't necessarily love the idea of playing the puck back to your goalie, but when you do play the puck back to your goalie, especially a goalie like Carter Hutton, who is aggressive when it comes to playing the puck, you're kind of expecting him to be able to handle it. And Hutton just completely whiffed on it. Like, I would have rather seen him cover it with a glove or even just chip it to behind the net. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to try and handle the puck, you better not make a mistake, especially with a guy like Joel Farabee, who was a very good goal scorer in his first year, or in his year at college, and has been scoring goals a little bit more consistently at the professional level. You can't just gift wrap him one like that. Not to mention, earlier in the game, the first goal wasn't a terrible goal to give up, but if you go back and look at it, Hutton kind of over pursues like he has been doing lately. He over pursues to the right. A pass gets through Montour, which it probably shouldn't have, right onto Drew's backhand, and by then Hutton's got to slide back to the left, and he just can't get positioning enough because he overcommitted so far to one side that no matter how hard he pushed back, he wasn't going to be able to stop that goal. So this game, Carter versus Carter, like you said earlier, very clear that Carter Hart is head and shoulders the better Carter compared to Carter Hutton.
And we've been saying this about Carter Hutton all year, and again, we don't mean to just kind of throw shade on Carter Hutton, but there just seems to be times this year where you and I have discussed, even at Ice Dogs games, and it just seems like the guy is just way too over-aggressive and over-commits on certain plays that just ends up costing his team goals and just makes him just really look unreliable in net at times. There's just plays where he's over-committing to one side, or he tries to go for a poke check for whatever reason, or tries to make some sort of weird play that more times than not this year has definitely backfired and ended up in the back of his net.
Yeah, again, like, I'm not here to just completely rag on Carter Hutton. Like, I feel bad for the guy. You know, he was a really good goalie in St. Louis. He was a good goalie in Nashville. But this year I consistently find myself saying, you know, be nice to have a save there. Gotta have a save there, you know. I mean, not that Ullmark is like a Vezina caliber goalie, but you kind of saw the contrast difference between the two goalies when you look at these last two games. When we get into the Washington game, I'll discuss it a little bit more. But Hutton just seems to – he makes some really big saves, but he just seems to always give up that goal at the most inopportune time. Kind of like Robin Lehner when he was here in Buffalo. Robin Lehner's obviously a fantastic goalie, but it just seemed that he was plagued by giving up that untimely goal, and it kind of seems that Carter Hutton is doing the same thing here in Buffalo, and it's rather unfortunate because I really did like the signing when he came in, and he started this year very strong, but it just bottomed out for him.
Yeah, it's like he was brought in for stability on the back end while Ullmark developed, and now it's kind of like in the situation where Ullmark's kind of passed him, and he's the more reliable goalie now, and Hutton's kind of the veteran backup, and you're kind of in a situation like, okay, like, when are we supposed to play this guy when Ullmark's healthy? And obviously Hutton's had to play a lot more with Ullmark being out. Jonas Johansson played a few games, obviously was not good in his first stint in the NHL, which was to be expected. He was just kind of thrown into that situation with the Ullmark injury. But Hutton I feel like at times that a goalie can really kind of just bail you out and make you feel better about the team not playing great enough in front of you at points. And I just feel like Hutton, he hasn't given me that type of reliability that I kind of expect from goalies when the team in front of you isn't playing up to caliber, which this is no excuse for how bad the Sabres team defense has been at times this year, but it just feels like at times you need your goalie to just kind of be that calming presence back there, and more times than not I feel more anxious about Carter Hutton than I do feeling confident about him back there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, again, I'm not on this podcast saying that goaltending is the only reason the Sabres are bad, because it's clear that it's not. But like you said, I don't know about from the player standpoint, because the players do need to be better. But from a fan standpoint, it's never a good thing when you see, Carter Hutton's in net tonight, and you're like, damn. You know what I mean? Like you said, it gives you that feeling of anxiety that comes over you where you're just like, man, they got to put up at least 3 or 4 tonight to even have a chance. And of course, you know, when you look at the losing streak that they went on, they didn't score enough. It's very obvious they didn't score enough. I mean, they scored 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3. Like, you're averaging less than 2 goals a game. That's obviously not good, but when you look at it, you gave up 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, and 3. So, like, obviously you're not scoring enough, but there was a couple games there where it could have been different if, you know, you just get a timely stop from Carter Hutton. Like, The Arizona game was completely that. You were up 2-0. You just need your goalie to come in and stabilize it out, and then just he gives up one, and then the wheels just came flying off. And it was just a prime example of, like you said, that feeling of anxiety that exists when Carter Hutton's in the net and he gives up a goal. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Once he gives up that first goal, you kind of just get the feeling, oh man, this isn't going to end well.
I guess maybe we were spoiled in the past with obviously having two unbelievable goaltenders in Dominic Hasek and Ryan Miller over the years, where we just kind of expected that we should be getting elite level goaltending, and now that those guys' eras have passed, we really haven't found that guy that is the next predecessor to those guys. We obviously, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is still developing, but he could possibly be that in the future. He's not that yet. But the Sabres are trying to find an option until Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is ready and developed, which goalies take a long time to develop for the most part. So it's a situation where the Sabres don't have an elite level goaltender right now, and you look at, you always have to in this area look back at your division rival and the team that gets covered the most around here in the Toronto Maple Leafs, and how much Frederik Andersen saves the Leafs bacon on more nights than not. The guy should be in the Hart discussion almost every single year, just because of how bad the Leafs team defense is at times throughout the season, and how many times he comes up with big key saves to keep them in games, or just to at least keep them within striking distance for their elite level offense to try to get back when they pinch and give up a little bit on the defensive side. You see a guy like Frederik Andersen, how much he can game change for the Leafs and get them those big W's, and the Sabres just don't have that guy right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can look at, if you look at the Atlantic Division, I mean, you look at the big three, or the top three, obviously. I don't think Toronto is on the same level as Tampa Bay and Boston, but you look at Boston, they have Tuukka Rask. You look at Tampa Bay, they have Andrei Vasilevsky. And like you said, Toronto does have Frederik Andersen. I mean, and I don't know, maybe they're a little bit past their prime, but you look at teams like Montreal and Florida in our division, they do have Vezina winners in Sergei Bobrovsky, Carey Price. You look at even Detroit. I mean, you got to give Jonathan Bernier a ton of credit. He's on a tanking team that only has 17 wins, but when you look at Bernier's stats compared to Howard's, like, you almost wish that Bernier was on the Sabres, because maybe this season would be a little different if you had a goalie like him. When you look at the teams in the division, I mean, Buffalo's goaltending it might be the worst out of the division. And that's not good when you're in a division that has high-powered offenses like Tampa Bay, Boston, and Toronto. Even Florida, to an extent, has a high-powered offense when they're healthy and clicking. So it's not good when your goaltending is not up to the level that you want it to be at.
No, and I think it's probably between them and Ottawa for the worst goaltending in the division right now. You bring up a great point of how many elite level goaltenders are within this division, so that makes it even more tough, and it kind of exposes your goaltending in that same scenario. So again, Linus Ullmark has taken a huge step this year, and I'm glad he's back, and we'll see how long it takes him to kind of get back in his game, although he looked great last night. But it's just the Sabres kind of just, they need to find that guy that's going to be able to give them the stability back there that in games where they don't play great is able to steal them 2 points.
Yeah, and I want to be perfectly clear. I think Linus Ullmark is a very good goalie. I think he's a 55, 60 game starter? I honestly don't know. I can't say yes or no, but I know he can definitely be that 1A or 1B option, but you have to have a consistent goalie to pair up with him, and they thought Carter Hutton was going to be that. Rightfully so. His season before the Sabres signed him was absolutely fantastic, but it just hasn't worked out. So do I think the Sabres are in the playoff discussion if Ullmark doesn't get hurt? Not necessarily, but I do think that a couple of those games that Hutton lost even the games that Johansson was forced to be in net, I think some of those games do go very differently if Ullmark is healthy. I don't think that puts him in the playoff discussion, but yeah, losing Ullmark obviously hurt. And I hope that Botterill or whoever the GM is will look at this summer and say, okay, let's see if we can find a guy to pair with Ullmark to bring our goaltending up to a level that can bail us out when we need it, like you said.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody would be willing to take Carter Hutton. He's only got one more year left on his deal, and I think for the right team, he could be a decent backup for somebody. Maybe you're looking at a team like Anaheim who has John Gibson. Maybe he'd be a good fit over there. But it just seems like the Sabres need somebody else to go with Ullmark. at the end of this year. Like you said, whoever the GM is will have to figure that out. But it's just been tough because Olmark's been out, so it's kind of hard to think that he's going to be able to just jump right back to that level that he was at before he got hurt. And it might take a little bit of time. Although last night it was pretty impressive from my standpoint. But just talking about that recap, just finishing off with the game in Philly there, just a few lapses, but it seemed like the Flyers, for most of the game, they were in control. Like at no point did I feel like the Sabres were a better team than the Flyers were at any point in that game, and it just seemed like the Flyers coming in, having a huge winning streak and being on fire, almost getting to the top of the Metropolitan Division now. It just seemed like a bad spot for the Sabres to be in that game on Saturday.
Yeah, and one thing that I want to touch on, and I think it's going to be a common theme for the rest of this podcast, like we talked about it before, I tweeted it out and it kind of got some traction in the last game, but Dominic Cahoon scored the only goal for the Sabres. Yeah, he only played 13 minutes and 30 seconds against the Flyers. So, I mean, we'll talk about it again in Washington because it's more of the same. But, I mean, there was some mental lapses. But, I mean, there's got to be some adjustments made. Philadelphia was a case where the top two lines actually were firing really well. The Jeff Skinner, Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart line, the Dominic Cahoon, Victor Olofsson, Marcus Johansson line, they were generating some offense, and they looked dangerous for a lot of the night. Couldn't beat Carter Hart, which is pretty tough to say because Carter Hart is probably one of the best goalies, and I think he's like 22 years old. So Philadelphia took them a while to figure out their goaltending situation, but once they got it right, they set themselves up long-term for the future there, and hopefully Buffalo is on track to do that with either Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen or third-round pick this year, Eric Portillo, but we're years away from finding out if they have something like that in their pipeline.
Hopefully it doesn't take us starting 9 goalies throughout the year like it did the Flyers last year to figure out who their goalie was. I really don't think we can handle that.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, that's how the Flyers game went, and the Sabres will just have to move on here, looking ahead to the game against Washington last night back at home. And we're actually going to go over that game after our first commercial break on the show today. We'll be right back here on the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, serving Italian pizzas made with the freshest, top-quality ingredients. Loaded subs and our famous chicken wings, winners of the 2017 Reader's Choice Awards, and the brand-new recipients of the 2019 Reader's Choice Diamond Award from Niagara this week for Best Pizza in Niagara Falls. Open daily, located on the corner of Drummond Road and Dunn Street. Available for call-ahead pickup or delivery. 905-374-4400. Debit and credit accepted for both. You've tried the rest. It's time to try us. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano. Attention job seekers. If you're currently looking for work in the Niagara region, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Center, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road, Niagara Falls. Free services include resource area open to the public, resume and cover letter writing, community resource and referral information, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, second career information and registration assistance, and check out our available workshops under our events calendar on our website for more details at www.ehc.on.ca, the Niagara Employment Help Center. Marcel Dion Inc. Come in and check out our store and meet Marcel Dion himself. We have wall-to-wall NFL, MLB, and NHL licensed products and all kinds of collectibles. We specialize in autographed sports memorabilia. If you don't see what you're looking for, just ask and we'll find it for you. So next time you need a great gift idea for that sports fanatic in your life, or you need to add to your own collection, come visit us first. You won't be disappointed. 905-357-7678, Marcel Dion Inc. Chippin' Charlie's, it's where the locals go. Fun, friendly, and entertaining staff. You're not just a customer, you're family. Lots of TVs, amazing food, and always a great time. Open daily 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. Call 905-371-3428 for inquiries and reservations, located at 8189 Lundy's Lane, Niagara Falls. Chippin' Charlie's, it's where the locals go. Mid-City Motors Niagara, your premium source for pre-owned vehicles. Financing and leasing for all types of credit. Check them out at 4460 Drummond Road, Niagara Falls, or at mcmniagara.com. They are also happy to announce Mid-City Mechanic is now open. They can repair, maintain, and service all makes and models of vehicles. Conveniently located behind Mid-City Motors at Drummond Road and Perkins Street. They will be happy to help you keep your car on the road. 905-371-2277. That's Mid-City Motors and Mid-City Mechanic. You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network. Alright guys, welcome back to the second segment of today's Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Cappy and Austin back with you here. And Austin, let's talk about it. So it was a great night last night in Buffalo. You were actually at this game, last minute decision on your part to go to this game, and you were in for a treat. The Sabres actually won a game in the month of March, and also, like you had mentioned earlier in the show, snapped their huge losing streak before they had traded for after they had traded for Wayne Simmons and Dominic Cahoon, trying to play meaningful games in March that Jason Botterill loved to talk about, and they ended up not playing any meaningful games to start March except for last night, and of course it's against the high-powered Washington Capitals that of course they end up pulling out the victory here in a 3-2 shootout. Sabres were down early, the Sabres were up 2-0 in this game going into the third period, and I was even texting you earlier in the game and just saying, like, I'm shocked. Like, I can't believe how well they're playing against this team. I can't believe Washington hasn't scored a goal yet. I was kind of just waiting for the bomb to go off and the Capitals to just all of a sudden score 4 or 5 goals with their high-powered offense, and it didn't happen. They ended up tying the game in the third period, but the Sabres get the victory in the shootout. Austin, what was your analysis of this game?
Yeah, so obviously, very, very good that they got the win. The first period, a little bit low event. I think it was only like 9 to 8 in shots. The Johansson, Cahoon, Olofsson line producing. Again, for the second straight game, they scored a goal. That was good. Jack Eichel finally breaks his pointless slump. That power play, my jaw almost hit the ground when I saw the puck movement there, because I have not seen puck movement like that from the Buffalo Sabres on a power play in I couldn't tell you how long. So that was awesome. Second period, again, they played really good. I was really impressed with Allmark. The third period, this has been pretty common this year for Ralph Kruger's Buffalo Sabres when they get a lead. It happened earlier in the year when they were actually good. They were able to hold on because, like I said, Carter Hutton started out really well. But when they have a multiple goal lead in the third period, they kind of just sit back and just allow the other team to tee off. And when you're playing a team like the Washington Capitals, it is going to come back to bite you. Thankfully, Carter Hutton. Thankfully, Linus Ullmark was on his A game in his first start back since the injury and ended up making some huge saves. The overtime, I don't want to talk about the power play because he sent out Rasmus Ristolainen on a 4-on-3 power play instead of Rasmus Dahlin, who was their best defenseman on this night. By the way, he only played 17 minutes and 16 seconds. That is atrocious. But yeah, the lineup decisions when they had a lead, very questionable. The lineup decisions in overtime, you can't really question him because he does roll out Dahlin, Eichel, Olofsson. He does roll out his big guns, but Jeff Skinner never sees that time, which is, I guess that's fine. But one thing Jeff Skinner was good at last year was 4-on-3 overtime in the playoffs, or in the overtime, sorry. If you remember correctly, in their 10th game in a row, Jeff Skinner was the one who stripped the puck from, I believe it was Brent Burns or Erik Karlsson in overtime to beat Martin Jones on San Jose. I was also at that game last year.
I was there as well.
Yeah. So it was really good that they got a win, so I don't want to complain too much. But the season is over, so we are going to we're left to overanalyze everything, and I'm glad they got the win. Not a fan of Ralph Kruger's lineup deployment when they had a lead and in overtime. I was not a fan of it.
What do you think of this strategy that he does where he throws out Curtis Lazar to take the opening faceoff of overtime, and if they win it, he automatically goes to the bench?
Well, mean, when it works, I really like it because, I mean, when it works, there's really no harm, no foul, right? I mean, he wins the face-off back to Dahlin. Dahlin can just control the puck, give him enough time to get off the ice. When it doesn't work, Curtis Lazar is not exactly the guy you want stuck out there in overtime for a long period of time. I mean, he's a good enough skater where, he's not going to get burned, but when it just comes to puck possession, he's not the player you want out there. So I'm a little bit perplexed by it. When it has worked more often than not this year. He has done a good job at winning those faceoffs, but for the most part, I don't know exactly stat-wise, but Jack Eichel has been pretty solid at faceoffs this year. I think he's more than capable of winning a faceoff to start overtime. So I guess the word is perplexed. I'm a little bit confused as to why he relies on it so much, but I guess Phil Housley kind of did the same thing last year with Johan Larsson, so I don't know.
Yeah, and we obviously saw that Eichel wasn't taking faceoffs for a while with whatever injury that he was dealing with. The thing with Lazar taking the faceoffs is, like you said, when it works, it's great. But if he doesn't win that faceoff, you're playing against the other team's top unit to start to start overtime. So you're playing against their top players who are most likely going to be their fastest skaters on the ice, and it seems like the Sabres are essentially shorthanded when Curtis Lazar starts overtime against another team's top three 3-on-3 unit, and it just seems like, oh man, like if the other team gets the puck, and you kind of just feel like the Sabres are already at a disadvantage.
Yeah, like I'm trying to remember I don't remember exactly who started overtime for the Capitals, but if you look at let's just say hypothetically, you have Alex Ovechkin, Evgeny Kuznetsov, TJ Oshie, or Nick Backstrom. Defense, John Carlson. I mean, yeah, I'm not exactly – I don't know if I'd be willing to risk having Curtis Lazar stuck out there against those guys. I mean, obviously, like I said, Kruger thinks it's worth the risk because it's worked more than often than not, but like you said, he's not exactly the guy you want out there against the other team's big guns, especially when that other team's big guns consist of Nick Backstrom, arguably – probably the best passing center of at least since 2010. I mean, I know Joe Thornton's still in the league, but Nick Backstrom is right up there, and the best goal scorer of all time in Alex Ovechkin. I mean, Lazar's not exactly the guy that I would want to be stuck out there against those guys. And
it was funny because Alex Ovechkin actually didn't even get a shift in overtime until late in overtime because the Sabres had that power play, and because they started off with Kuznetsov, and I believe it was Verana. I could be wrong, but the Ovechkin did not start overtime, and he wasn't even on the ice for the first 2 or 3 shifts. So again, that's showing his age a little bit, but it was interesting to see the overtime and how it played out. But even getting to that point, you had Jack Eichel finally coming through, getting over his, I believe it was a 7-game pointless streak at that point, getting that nice power play goal. Like you said, the puck movement on that power play was excellent. Carter Hart was completely out of position by the time Eichel had the puck. He had the whole net to shoot at. When was the last time the Sabres had anything like that? And even the first setup on that beautiful goal by Victor Olofsson, where Dahlin makes the pass to Johansson coming in the zone, and Johansson's able to find Olofsson on the right dot there, and Olofsson just, his release after getting the puck is just incredible. Like, every time he kind of shoots from that angle, you expect it to go in for a rookie who now has 20 goals on the season and continues to rise up the Sabres ranks for goals by a rookie. They had the stat up last night. I believe he's almost cracking the top 10 here. So it's just and he's missed a good portion of the season, or else he'd probably be near the top 5. But it was great to see the Sabres jump out to that lead. I knew that when the third period started, Washington was going to score some goals. It just, you felt like it was coming. Ovechkin breaks through with just a vintage Ovi type goal there. Grind, like being able to, make that move around the defenseman and then just kind of pot it in. It's what Ovi does. And then the unfortunate shot that went off I forget which defenseman's skate it went off of, but the Orlov shot that was going wide and it went off the skate and went in. It was just an unfortunate tying goal for the Sabres, but at that point, I thought the game was the game was getting out of their hands at that point when Washington came back from 2-0, made it 2-2, and then we finally had what we thought was the go-ahead goal, and of course the Sabres once again do not understand why they get called for goaltender interference. Ralph Kruger was thinking about throwing out the challenge, but if they would have been shorthanded, Washington probably would have scored on that power play. So I don't exactly blame him for not challenging it. But again, like you'll hear in Ralph Kruger's post game, he still doesn't even understand what is and what isn't goalie interference right now in this league.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't understand how the logic behind it. Like, that goal was counted, like a similar goal in a similar situation was counted in the Pittsburgh game. So I do totally understand why Kruger didn't challenge. I mean, with our bad penalty kill and with the fact that no one really knows what goalie interference is. However, I think that one, again, I'm not going to nitpick because they won, but was it worth the risk of the penalty? I guess obviously to Kruger it wasn't, but I feel like there was a chance that could have got overturned, but I don't know. I don't even know if Skinner really impeded Holtby that much, but no one knows what goalie interference in the NHL is. So, I mean, Kruger's logic, I don't know if you heard his comments after the game, which we're obviously going to listen to, but his logic that he would like to see the refs call it a goal and have the burden be on the other team. I mean, he's technically not wrong. In a play like that, I mean, Buffalo scored. It really shouldn't be on them to prove that the goal should count. It should be on the other team to prove why the goal shouldn't count. But, that's why there's a coach's challenge for both teams. That's why there's refs. There's always going to be human error. But at least it didn't come back to bite them in the end.
It kind of reminds me of what the National Football League is doing, where instead of just blowing plays dead, they kind of just let the play out, and then if the team wants to challenge that the guy was down or whatever the situation may be, they challenge it and then can overrule it. But I like where the NFL kind of just lets the play happen instead of just blowing the whistle dead when a team could possibly run a ball back for a touchdown, and then it gets automatically blown dead at whatever yard line they're at instead of them getting the 7 points. I think that's a good analogy you bring up, and I think I'd like to see the NHL just say, call it a goal, and then if the other team wants to challenge it or they review it, the NHL just reviews it themselves and overturns it. But I just think that way too many times we're seeing just goals just waved off, and then no challenges are being made because of it, because teams are worried that they're going to be shorthanded because of it. If they already called it no goal on the ice, it's going to stand no goal. Whatever the call is on the ice, they're going to stick with it more times than not, and I think it's an unfortunate situation that the Sabres have been burned. It's kind of come to burn them more times than not this season.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, the NFL, the thing they also do pretty well is they review all scoring plays. I mean, I know in hockey, obviously, it's a little different, but again, that's a play where it was so controversial. I know there's a coach's challenge in play for that reason, but with the risks for coaches challenging, they don't want to, that's why there's risks now with challenging, is because they don't want coaches to challenge that much anymore. But when it comes to something like that, I feel like it should be on the league's sake to step in. There's people in the war room in Toronto watching that goal. They should be able to step in and be like, hey, you might want to take another look at that one. So I don't know. Like you said, it's unfortunate. I mean, it's happened twice now. I mean, the one that 3 times, if you want to count the Larson penalty, that shouldn't have been a penalty. I know there was nothing to do with a goal there, but he was completely pushed into Murray against Pittsburgh, and they called it a penalty on Larson, but when Hornquist did it, it was a goal. I don't know. So I don't know what you can do there, but yeah, I mean, it's an unfortunate rule that this time the Sabres didn't get burned by it, which is good. But in that last minute against Washington, I was petrified because Ristolainen, with about a minute and a half to go, made a terrible pinch in the neutral zone and just let Ovechkin walk by him. And then Washington had the puck in Buffalo zone for the last minute and a half, and I was almost certain the game was going to end. Thank God Allmark was in net and it didn't end, because that would have been all on Ristolainen and it wouldn't have been pretty.
No, Washington, and that's the thing. It was within 5 minutes left in the game, and if Kruger challenges that and loses it, Washington's going on the power play with a chance to just win the game outright or in regulation. So it's just, I feel like the refs it's a fast game for everybody, and everybody needs a little bit of extra help. And I think that the War Room in Toronto or whoever they have spotting the game should be able to help the referees out in that situation and call down and say, hey, double check that was a goal, or double check that was goalie interference. I just feel like sometimes the burden's put too much on the officiating when it's a really fast game nowadays, and it's kind of hard. Just like when they go to replay in the NFL now, they have all these replays. It's because there's so many minute things that the human eye just can't see at that split second, where the video review is helping the referees in that situation or making them get better because maybe they screw up on too many calls and they have to learn how to be better with those types of plays. But I just feel like the NHL needs to have a little bit more in place to help out the referees with these calls that can be so crucial. You look at last night's game, it could be 3-2 for Buffalo or it could be 3-2 for Washington if they get that power play. So it's in these very crucial situations where these things are happening, even when reviewing major penalties, like with the Joe Pavelski and Vegas incident last year, or the offside with Colorado in the playoffs. There's so many situations where the referees the burden can't just all be put on them at times.
Yeah, like, I think even a good idea would be if they don't want to take they don't want to take the puck out of the officials' hands. The War Room in Toronto can just call in and say, hey, you might want to take a look at that. We're not going to overturn the call for you, but, when it comes down to it and Toronto is calling in, telling the refs to take another look at it, I mean, I don't think the refs are going to be so stubborn where if they still have the power to uphold the call or overturn it. I mean, I think the refs would get it that if Toronto's calling this in and telling me to look at it, that I screwed up. So that way, the refs can still have the power, but Toronto can just, give them a little bit of a reminder. Hey, you might want to take a look at that. You call the goalie interference. Kind of looked like he was pushed in. I don't know. You can figure it out, but I'm just telling you what I saw, Like, you don't have to take the power out of the officials' hands, but you might as well use – it's clear that replay is not going away. So rather than try and just completely neglect it, as much as it sucks and as annoying as it is to stop the game for replays, it's here. You might as well embrace it and just make sure you get the call right. Because if you're not going to get the call right, the replay is useless.
Yep, exactly. So moving on from the goalie interference stuff, we've talked about that enough. The Sabres end up going to a shootout with Washington. Like you said, there were times where I thought Washington was just, okay, yeah, this game's over. They're in the zone, or Ovi's barreling down, going to do one of his classic, that classic move where he goes to his forehand around the defenseman and then puts it in short side. He had a few of those opportunities, and I can't believe he didn't finish on a couple of them. But the game ends up going scoreless until in overtime and goes to the shootout. And what did you think about the whole shootout? The shootout as a whole, it went to 14. It had 14 total shooters in it, so it went to 7 rounds. Dahlin and Kuznetsov both scored in the same round to keep it going for both teams. And then Dominic Cahoon, of all people that we've talked about here, about Ralph Kruger not using him in certain situations, was the 7th shooter for Buffalo, who ended up scoring the game winner. And obviously Jeff Skinner was not one of the players chosen to shoot. With that being said, Austin, what did you think of the whole shootout?
Yeah, so the Sabres must have done a really good job at scouting Holtby and saw something they liked, because if you look at it, Jack Eichel attempted to go 5-hole. I believe Olofsson shot 3rd. He attempted to go 5-hole. Dahlin scored 5-hole, and so did Cahoon. So 4 of the 7 shooters attempted to go 5-hole. I'm not going to talk about Sam Reinhart. I think he kind of screwed up there. Marcus Johansson completely missed a net, so that's always good. But yeah, it seemed that the Sabres kind of had an idea what they wanted to do in that shootout by attacking the 5-hole, and Rasmus Dahlin kind of did the old Linus Omark from back in his Edmonton days, fake the slap shot and just slide it through. Cahoon with a very slick move for the shootout winner. I like the shootout a lot. I think Allmark was very good. I mean, Kuznetsov, that was a beautiful goal by him. Just amazing patience and a great shot to beat Allmark. But other than that, I mean, he stopped 6 out of 7. It was a really good shootout from my perspective. And, it's not often that we can celebrate a shootout win in Buffalo, because historically we haven't been that great at them.
I mean, you look at the shooters for both teams, and you say, it went to 7 shooters. With those shooters, Washington would win 9 times out of 10. Oshie, Kovalchuk, Backstrom, Kuznetsov, Ovechkin, Verana, and then even Panik as the last shooter. It's like, wow, like that's pretty lethal 6 guys to put on the ice to start a shootout there. And Olmark, he was up for the task in his first game back. Definitely not an easy game for him, playing against one of the elite teams in the NHL in Washington. And he stood tall, and he got the Sabres the W in this game. And I go back to thinking that if Carter Hutton started this game, would the Sabres have won?
Yeah, I mean, again, it feels like we rag on Hutton, but we're really not. Like, we're honestly not. We're actually being very objective. But don't have confidence that if Carter Hutton's in the net that they win this game, to be honest. I don't even know if it gets to a shootout, to be honest, because the way that the Sabres played in the third period, the way that Ralph Kruger deployed certain people in the third period, it wasn't good. I think there would have been a lot of pressure on Hutton, and like I said, he just seems to give up that timely goal, or that untimely goal, I should say. I don't think they win. You're right. You're 100% right. I don't think they win if he's in net.
No, and lastly, before we get to the post-game audio, what did you think of Jeff Skinner not being chosen as one of the shooters? The Sabres shootout lineup consisted of Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart, Victor Olofsson, standard top three there. Then Rasmus Dahlin, like you said, beautiful fake slapshot Chara style, and then just putting it in past Holtby. Then Jimmy Vesey, Marcus Johansson, and then Dominic Cahoon was the seventh shooter who won it for them. So what did you think of the choice of shooters in the shootout?
I think it's a little peculiar that Skinner didn't get chosen over Vesey. I mean, I think Vesey has been historically okay in the shootout, but I mean, like, Vesey didn't score, so I don't feel too bad going off about this, but you are paying the guy $9 million. He is one of the best even-strength goal scorers. I know the shootout is completely different. It's a breakaway. It's really not even hockey. I get it. It's a skills competition, but I mean, there's only two options, a goal or no goal. So, I mean, Skinner can score goals. I mean, you're gonna score every time in the shootout? No, obviously not. So, I don't know. I think, I guess you could say, I understand everyone else, really, but I think I could have seen the argument for Skinner over Vesey. I mean, Johansson does have very good puck handling skills. I know he completely missed the net. It looked very bad, but I think he could have given Skinner a chance. I mean, I don't see, like, what's the harm in it? Like, he is signed here long term. He's got a no trade clause. He is not going anywhere. He's going to be here long after Ralph Kruger. So I don't know. The usage of certain players by Ralph Kruger is what is raising red flags for me. I know it feels like a theme. I talk about it all the time, but yeah, he doesn't seem to deploy some of his best players and doesn't seem to put some of his best players in positions to succeed.
Yeah, Exhibit A, Dominic Cahoon, which we'll talk about when we wrap up this game, after we go over Ralph Kruger and Jack Eichel's post-game from last night against Washington. So up first is Ralph Kruger, courtesy of WGR Sports Radio 550.
Very soft, questionable call, and we just don't know what to call and not call. And I thought it showed a lot of character in the group after the 2-2. They fight back. We get for us, a clear goal, and we stuck with it. So real proud of the guys to get the win here today. It was it's been tough slugging of late. We're not getting anything for free. We knew to get this first win in the hole we've been in, it wasn't going to be easy, but we didn't think it would be this hard, and just pleased that they ended up, finding a way to win it.
Were you impressed with just the fact that it looked like Linus hadn't been on for 5 weeks? It's probably a good indicator.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think I've spoken to you so often about our rehab team. They send people game ready, and whether it's a D-man, a forward. Now Linus, first time I've experienced it that long with a goalie. It's amazing the work that our off-ice crew and on ice, with Dennis Miller, the work that's being done to get these guys game ready, and how he was able to step in today, really, truly, with an outstanding performance. And, we're really pleased to see him right back where he left.
How big is it just to get Jack going again? I mean, he looked, even beyond the goal, he looked in on a lot of things tonight, maybe the last couple of weeks.
I think everybody in this room who cares about the Sabres and the fans and all of us went through a pretty tough stretch after Colorado and Vegas where the the pain of the reality was really hard to swallow. And I think you can see we're getting over it now. We're continuing to work on our game. We're continuing to add value to the process, which is what we want to do here. And Jack, of course, at the lead of that, just looked a lot more comfortable today. And I think he's let go of some of that pressure that he was feeling, and he's sharing it with the team. And as a result, just a really strong game from him today, and really pleased to see. I mean, for me, that should have been reviewed for sure. I mean, if you look at what they do in other sports, like in football, there's a certain time where it's just reviewed. And I think you could say last 5 minutes of the game or whatever, at game-deciding goal. It's for me the position that I'm in there as a coach to challenge that, which is now would only put us shorthanded and right in the tail end of the game. There's no way you can challenge that anymore because you just feel no confidence in the calls. We've been declined twice on calls we thought should be, and there just needs to be more clarity on goalie interference. But I think that one would have been logical. It would have been a logical fall to allowing the goal because it was definitely questionable. Jeff even tries to avoid him. He pushes into him. And let's take a look at it then if they want to challenge it because it's a game deciding goal, but logic didn't prevail there.
So there's Ralph Kruger's post game from last night, and you know what? I actually agree with Ralph Kruger about talking about the goalie interference stuff, talking about the last 5 minutes should be, if there's a situation where a goal is scored or goalie interference with less than 5 minutes left, kind of like in the NFL where within the 2-minute warning of the fourth quarter or a half, it's automatically reviewed from the booth. I think that's a good idea that the NHL maybe should look into.
Yeah, I actually do. I completely agree. I mean, in the last 2 minutes, the NFL pretty much, they don't take the ball out of the officials' hands, but they do say, hey, the coaches don't have to risk a timeout in the final 2 minutes. They don't have to do any of this because we're going to step in and review plays that potentially look like you made the wrong call. And I think the NHL definitely should adopt a similar philosophy. If it's the last 5 minutes of the third period, I would think I would be for that. I mean, 5 minutes, a lot could change, so I can't imagine the NHL actually doing this, but it would be a good idea to look into. I know the competition committee will probably meet in the summer, so maybe this will be something on their docket. I mean, they're still trying to get the offsides rule right, so I think we're probably a few years away from them even discussing the potential of something like that, but I do like Ralph's idea there a lot.
And he was talking about how he was dumbfounded on the goalie interference call. And again, he even stated there that he wanted the challenge, but because of them having the possibility of being shorthanded with Washington's lethal power play, having a chance to outright win the game at that point if the challenge doesn't go the Sabres' way, I don't blame him for not challenging that because then you're just shorthanded trying to you're down a goal with a minute or two left trying to get yourself back in the game, not even getting a point. But again, maybe it would matter more if the Sabres were actually in a position where points mattered. But regardless of that, I'm okay with what Kruger said, and I hope the NHL is listening because he's right about how, you kind of take it out of the... You kind of give coaches no option to even challenge there because there's no point in doing it as you end up screwing yourself over at times.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if he would have been a little bit more aggressive in challenging if that were, say, like a game-tying goal, or like you said, if they were actually in a playoff race. But I think maybe, if that was a game-tying goal rather than a go-ahead goal, he probably would have at least risked the challenge. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, at some point, he even said he's not confident. He's lost his last two challenges. You know what I mean? I'm not a coach and I don't have the ability to challenge, but I mean, I'm sure there is some mental play in there. Like if you have lost your last two, you are going to second guess yourself. You are going to second guess your video coaching. So yeah, why not give the coaches, like for a certain amount of time in each game, why not give the coaches the luxury of, hey, don't worry, if we in Toronto or we in the officiating will step in if we think the refs made a wrong call. And it will be no risk to you because we want to get the game right. Like you're right. Hopefully the NHL is listening to that because I will give Kruger credit for that. He is a very smart guy, and when he talks, people should listen.
Except when it comes to line combinations. But lastly...
Yeah, he's terrible at usage.
But lastly, the only other thing I took from the press conference was him talking about how the off-ice staff had Omar game ready right away. What did you think of that comment?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's probably going to sound contradictory, but I think Mike Bales and the goaltending coach and along with the training staff have done a very good job in the development of Linus Ullmark. I don't think they've done a really good job with Carter Hutton, but I think that's more of just a little bit of regression and some confidence issues, but I think they've done a good job with Linus Ullmark's game, and I think the training staff did a really good job of getting him game ready. The injury was obviously not something – anytime a goalie has a lower body injury, you worry about it because there's so much lower body movement that you want to make sure they are ready to go before they get put back into the crease. And it was a really good job by the training staff because Ullmark looked as good as as good as possible last night. He was the number one star for a reason, and he and the training staff and the goaltending coaching do deserve credit for getting him back to prime form.
Took the words right out of my mouth. Couldn't have said it any better. So let's go to the captain Jack Eichel's post game from last night as well here.
Yeah, I thought we moved the puck well. Thought we retrieved it. We outworked them. Make a couple good plays, and it's a great pass by Rass, and it's nice to get that one.
I like how you guys were able to respond. The goalie interference call is probably a tough one to swallow.
Yeah.
Especially the time that you guys were able to sort of.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, right? It's a tie game late, and I don't know. I think if you challenge it and you don't get it, we're in the box, right? So you don't want to give them an opportunity on the power play. So it's a tough time to take a challenge, but I don't know. Who knows what goalie interference is these days? So would have been nice to win it there in regulation, but we made it a little harder on ourselves. But at the end of the day, we win, so it feels good.
Jack, why were you guys so good in the first two periods?
Thought we were moving our feet. Thought we were getting above them. Thought we took their time and space away. Thought in the third, they obviously pressed hard. They're one of the best teams in the league, so we knew they were going to push, and thought we sat in our heels a little too much and got away from our game. But end of the day, find a way to get 2 points, win a game, so feels good.
What did you think about seeing Linus out there and seeing the way he played the first time in 5
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, how long?
5+ weeks?
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it seemed like he was real comfortable in there. He made some huge saves for us. Obviously he was great in the shootout as well, and it's good to have him back.
When you score off a face-off, the other goals off of a skate and a stick. I mean, you really like the way you guys were able to defend tonight against that team.
Yeah, I mean, I think they still had a lot of good chances. I mean, they're a pretty high-powered offensive team, and they make a lot of plays with the puck. So, I think we'd probably like to clean a little bit of it up in the D zone and giving them second and third opportunities to extend shifts. But yeah, I mean, I thought we did a good job. Our penalty kill was good for us in the first period, and I thought we made the plays when we needed to.
How difficult is that when those plays around the goal when you don't know if it's going to be called interference or not, if there's a lot of traffic in front?
Yeah, I mean, the goalies are so good, right? You got to get to the net and try and take their eyes away or make it tougher on them. So I think Skinny's just trying to get to the net there, and I think he tangles up with the stick. And yeah, I mean, it's not ideal. You never want to give a goal back. Rhino made a nice play there, and it's a big goal by Monty. But you got to live with the call, and you can't let it affect you. You just got to move on. It's frustrating. It seems like we've been on the opposite side of it twice now in the last little bit, but whatever. It is what it is.
So there's Captain Jack Eichel with some funny sound bites during that post-game, I guess it's a press conference because the locker rooms are now closed because of the coronavirus going around. So then now the players are going out to the podium to speak just like Ralph Kruger does after every game. So we don't know how long that's going to be for, but it's a little bit interesting. But some of Jack Eichel's comments, we both laughed when he goes, how long's it been since Linus has been out? 5 weeks. Oh, okay. It was just funny how his reaction to that. A lot of goalie interference talk, which we've already talked about. For most of this podcast here, Ralph Kruger talked about it as well. I like how he says nobody knows who knows what goalie interference is anymore because nobody really knows. So that was his quote there. And the last thing I took from it was. Actually, it wasn't even from the press conference. It was just by him talking, I remembered him scoring that goal. And just the sense of relief on his face of when he finally scored that goal to get off the schneid, it just seemed like, wow, like, finally, it's over and I can move on from this.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it looked like there was a weight lifted off his shoulders. He, Sam skated over to him, was the first one to go give him some props. And you could just tell that, the season might be over, but stuff like that still does get to players like Jack. You know what I mean? They're so competitive. They want to do the best they can. So when they're in a little slump like that, even if it is partially due because they're not 100%, it's always a huge relief to get that goal. And, he's 4 away from hitting the 40 goal mark, and barring anything catastrophic, I assume he's going to get there. So getting that one right there was definitely a huge relief for him. But his press conference was, it was good. Kind of touched on some of the similar points that Ralph touched upon, but I like him. I like the fact that he said that it was good to have Linus back, because I do think the team is more confident when Allmark is healthy and in the net, just because of, he definitely gives them the best chance to win out of any other goaltenders.
Absolutely. And it looks like Jack finally is getting a little bit of his bearings back after whatever that injury was. Again, I've said times I should have shut him down for the rest of the year, but it seems like he's playing a little bit better as of late. He's able to take faceoffs again, so we'll see how the rest of his season progresses here, and if he can get back to at least being in this conversation for top 5 in scoring this year. So we'll have to wait and see how the rest of the year goes for him, but it was definitely encouraging for him to finally break through again, because he definitely deserved it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So we're going to take our second commercial break on the show today, guys, and come back with the look ahead to the rivalry games upcoming against Montreal and Boston. So we'll be right back here on the show on the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition on the Armchair GM Sports Network. The Blue Line Diner is Niagara's leading breakfast restaurant. Great food, great service, and where else can you see one of the NHL's greatest players having coffee and conversation with patrons? Of course, Marcel Dion Inc. is located directly next door, and Marcel is always in and out of the restaurant, talking to the kids and the fans that walk through the doors. Open Tuesday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. 289-296-8785, the Blue Line Diner, located on Montrose Road, Niagara Falls. Simply Fit Health Club, real 24-hour access, 7 days a week. Located at 6595 Drummond Road, Niagara Falls. A clean, modern facility with top-of-the-line equipment, a friendly and non-judgmental environment, free Wi-Fi, ample parking, and more. Come in and tour their facility anytime during their office hours. 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, Saturday 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Sunday 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Don't hesitate to stop in. No appointment necessary. They take pride in helping their members reach their health and fitness goals at their convenience and for the best possible price. For only $9.99 bi-weekly, members will get access to the state-of-the-art facility any day, anytime. What are you waiting for? At Simply Fit, there are no excuses, only results. Come see for yourself, 289-296-9535, or info at simplyfithealthclub.com. Simply Fit Health Club. Michelangelo's, Niagara Falls' premier sports kitchen and bar. We're all about food, friends, and fun. Catch the game with us and grab a delicious bite to eat while enjoying a cold beer. Bus trips to sporting events, live music performances, and sports pools throughout the year. Open daily 11 a.m. to midnight and 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. Michelangelo's, Niagara Falls' premier sports kitchen and bar. Canadian Wrestling Figure Store. Check out their website at cwf.ecwid.com for the best selection in Canada for WWE Elites, Basics, and exclusive action figures. Free Canada-wide shipping on any order over $200. Enter the code ARMCHAIR at checkout so they know that we sent you to receive 10% off your order. Once again, that's Canadian Wrestling Figure Store at cwf.ecwid.com. Attention employers! Finding the right candidate to meet your hiring needs requires more than just posting an advertisement and waiting for a suitable candidate to apply. Let the Niagara Employment Help Center save you valuable time and money by making your hiring process easier. Free job postings, fill job vacancies quickly and efficiently, access to a bank of potential employees, reduce employment costs, all candidates will be pre-screened, job trials and placement incentives, and financial assistance may be applicable to offset the cost of training. Again, that's Niagara Employment Help Center, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road, Niagara Falls. www.ehc.on.ca. You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network. All right, guys, welcome back to the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition. Cappy and Austin back with you here. And on this segment, we're going to quickly go over the upcoming 2 games for the Sabres. They play at Montreal tomorrow and then home to Boston for 2010's night on Friday, which again, if you're going to the game on Friday, we look back at the most recent decade of Sabres history from Ryan Miller and Thomas Vanek to Jack Eichel and Rasmus Dahlin, apparently. And the first 10,000 fans in attendance will receive a pendant commemorating the 2010. So, unfortunately, I cannot go to that game as I work, but I would like to get that pendant. It's very nice. And, yeah, so it's the last promotional night of the year for the Sabres, I believe. Their last giveaway of the year, except for the last game of the season where they do the jerseys off the back, I believe, in the last home game of the season. But, yeah, so Austin, let's look ahead here to Montreal and Boston, two of the Sabres' biggest rivals in the Atlantic Division. What are we hoping for here?
Well, I mean, Montreal is just getting absolutely waxed right now by Nashville. I mean, Montreal is not a very good hockey team. So, I mean, I'm at least expecting a competitive game. If Buffalo looks anywhere like what they did in the first two periods against Washington, they're going to have a pretty good chance. I'm assuming Allmark gets the start against this one. Although, with Boston the very next night, you never know. It could be a Hutton game. But I'm at least expecting a competitive game on Thursday against the Canadiens, who are – they're only 3 points up on Buffalo. So the two teams are very evenly matched. On paper, it should be a competitive game. So.
Yeah, and the season record for the Sabres against the Habs, they won 5-4 in overtime early in the season. The second game they lost 3-1, and then so they're 1-1 currently. And then they also play Montreal on the 24th, so they play them here and then 2 weeks from now. So the last two games are both in Montreal, and they're 12 days apart. So we'll be seeing two games in the great city of Montreal in the last few games here for the Sabres. And if only the Sabres were in a position where these games mattered and we could look at those Montreal games and say, you know what, picking up 4 points there, we might be close to the Leafs. But obviously that ship has sailed as of last week, so we won't be looking into that anymore. But again, like you said, Montreal, they've had problems of their own this year with the coaching staff and people wanting Marc Bergevin fired and them underachieving at times this season. They're kind of almost in the same boat as the Sabres, except they don't really have a lot of high-end prospects like the Sabres, or high-end players like the Sabres do. I feel like that's kind of what Montreal lacks, even though they always seem to be a competitive team, despite not having the top-end, elite-level talent on their team. Kovalchuk came in, did a pretty good job for them, then obviously was shipped off to Washington. Carey Price, obviously one of the best goalies, if not the best goalie in the world. It's unfortunate he doesn't get to play in any meaningful games playing with the Habs over his career as of late, but Montreal is just one of those teams that, especially when you play in Montreal, I know the Sabres have had success in Montreal, but those games always scare me against division rivals because you never know what can happen. And like you said, they're getting absolutely destroyed right now by Nashville at home. So after the result tonight, you would expect the Habs to be coming back tomorrow night with a way better effort against a rival like Buffalo.
Yeah, like you said, it's divisional rivals, so for the most part, you can kind of just throw the records out the window. I mean, Buffalo, like you said, they're split 1-1 right now. You're hoping that if you're the Montreal Canadiens and their fans, you're hoping that you come out with a better effort in the next game because, like I said, it's 4-0 in the second intermission. You're getting outshot, outplayed in pretty much every aspect of the game, so it's not great. So you're hoping, that you're having a team like Buffalo come in who is, let's face it, they're reeling. They've only won one out of since the trade deadline, so you're hoping that you can at least get up for it. Both teams they're not officially eliminated, but let's face it, the playoffs just aren't in the cards. I mean, Montreal's 8 back of Carolina for the wild card, 8 back of Toronto for third in the division. Buffalo's 11 back, so playoffs are virtually out the window for both teams, but it is a divisional game. You never know what's going to happen. So if you're Ralph Kruger, you got to get your team mentally prepared because not only do you have the Montreal Canadiens, a tough divisional opponent, you have the Boston Bruins the very next night, another tough divisional opponent. So this next 2 games are going to be really big for the Sabres just in terms of let's see how they can respond. I mean, obviously the trade deadline, you had a huge losing streak after it, but I mean, you can still respond and rally and at least show that you guys are close to being some kind of competitive hockey team. So these next 2 games are pretty big for that.
Yep, and going on looking at the Boston game, obviously the Sabres have not had much success against the Bruins this year. Obviously, They're sitting at 0 wins, 3 losses on the year, a 3-2 loss, then a 3-0 loss, and a 3-2 loss on a back-to-back to end 2019 there. So the last meeting between the two teams, Sabres are looking to avoid the season series sweep against the Bruins, which I get ragged on from my good buddy Josh, who loves the Bruins and loves to rip on me about how the Sabres can never beat them. So shout-outs to him, I guess. But it's at home. Obviously, there's going to be a huge Bruins fan base that always shows up in Buffalo. As it's weird in the Southern Ontario region, especially in that Welland area. There seems to be a lot of Bruins fans in that region. So there's a fair amount of Boston Bruins, I guess, traction in the Southern Ontario region, despite it being dominated by Leafs Nation and even closer to the border, having a lot of Sabres fans near Fort Erie and such. But the Bruins always, and because of the original 6 team as well, obviously they're going to have a lot of fans everywhere. But the Bruins, it's not quite as bad as what we see with the Leafs, but there always seems to be a large number of Bruins fans in our building whenever we play them at home.
Yeah, I've started to notice it. It's maybe more so this year because the teams hasn't been great and there's been a lot of tickets selling. But Southern Ontario and maybe like some parts of Western New York, there seems to be just like random big groups of hockey fans that are teams that you wouldn't really expect. Like last night, there was a lot of Washington fans in the building, and I mean they obviously, I'm sure some traveled from a little bit farther, but
can somebody say bandwagon
or that? But like it was weird. Like you said, there's a weird random contingent of Bruins fans around here. I know a lot of people in Port Colborne who are Bruins fans. I know a lot of people in the Welland area. So, yeah, it's parts of Western New York and a lot of Southern Ontario. I know there's a lot of, obviously, Sabres and Leafs fans, but there's a lot of fans of teams that – not that you wouldn't expect, because like you said, the Bruins are original 6. They do have that pedigree, so I'm sure there's obviously a lot of people who grew up Bruins fans around here. But, yeah, it's weird. So it's going to be a tough game on home ice. I mean, the Bruins are the best team in the division for a reason. So I'm sure with how things have gone for the Sabres and how things are going for the Bruins that there's going to be some ticket sales going from Sabres fans to Bruins fans. So like you said, there is going to be a big Bruins contingent, and it's hopefully we know normally Jack Eichel gets up for those games, so hopefully he can quiet down the visiting fans that night.
So out of those 2 games there against 2 division rivals, Montreal and Boston, what is your prediction for this? I'll give mine really quick, and then I'll let you go with it. But I'm going to say 1 out of 4 points. I think because Montreal is getting waxed tonight by Nashville, I think they're going to have a much better effort against a divisional rival in Buffalo tomorrow. And I think the Sabres might be able to squeak out an overtime loss, but I think the Habs will win this game. But I do think the Sabres will sneak out a point. I'd love to sit here and say that the Sabres don't get swept by the Boston Bruins, because I would obviously hate that for multiple reasons. But they have not given me a reason to believe that they are going to have any chance in this game against Boston come Friday. Maybe if they pull out the win against Montreal, they'll be riding a 2-game winning streak after just beating Washington. They'll have some confidence, and again, Jack Eichel playing his hometown team and it being a rivalry game, it can go both ways. I get that, but it's just, to me right now, the way Boston's playing and them trying to remain up top of the Atlantic with Tampa trying to make their way back up, I think this is a game that the Bruins circle around and say, we need to go in there and just dominate and get this 2 points and just move on.
Yeah, so I agree with you on the Boston game. I'd love to say that Buffalo can pull out a win, but I just don't have the confidence in that. So I'm going to go with 2 out of 4 points. I think they are going to beat Montreal. Again, not knowing how Kruger's going to deploy the goaltending situation, I assume Hutton's going to get one of the 2 games, but I just think that, with Montreal, they do have the best goalie in the world in Carey Price, but at times this year he hasn't looked like Carey Price. I think there is the potential for Buffalo to go into Montreal and pull out a win. So I'm going to go with 2 out of 4, and the 2 being a win against Montreal. I don't see them getting a point against Boston at all. So yeah, I think they'll beat Montreal and lose to Boston in regulation.
Well, I hope you're right about the 2 points against Montreal. Lastly, before we go to our last commercial break and then end off with the prospects update, I forgot to go back to the Dominic Cahoon ice time debate that I know you're really passionate about, and obviously you talk about it on Twitter a lot. You're getting a lot of traction with the tweets that you've been talking about. Tell us what you've been writing about with Dominic Cahoon and his lack of ice time, and just how effective he's been when he's actually been on the ice and with that limited ice time.
So I'm just gonna start this by saying, like, I understand Cahoon is basically purely a 5-on-5 player for the Sabres. He doesn't play on special teams. I know he got a little bit of power play time in overtime. Like, he was on the second unit out there for a little bit with like 30 seconds left in the power play. So I understand that he is predominantly an even strength player, but just looking at the Washington game. So Dominic Cahoon played 13 minutes and 5 seconds. The only forward who played less ice time than Dominic Cahoon, Curtis Lazar, Wayne Simmons, and Jimmy Vesey. Now, when you think of Jimmy Vesey, Wayne Simmons, and Curtis Lazar, them and Dominic Cahoon don't really have a lot in common other than the fact that they don't play a lot of ice time. Dominic Cahoon is younger. He is a more skilled player. He is an offensive producer. He has scored 4 points in 6 games and has gotten a point in 4 out of 6 games as well. So it's not like he's got, one multi-point game and has disappeared for the rest of them. He has gotten points in 4 out of 6 games, including the shootout winner. You traded for him at the trade deadline. You traded Connor Sheary and Evan Rodriguez away to get this kid who is a pending restricted free agent, so you're going to have to sign him this summer. Basically what I'm saying is, how are you not using him more? I mean, obviously you're not going to put him on the first power play unit. The first power play unit is pretty set with the way it is, but you can throw him on the second power play unit because, let's face it, he can't make it any worse. The second power play unit is terrible. He doesn't really need to play penalty kill. The penalty kill sucks, but I'm not like clamoring for him to play on the penalty kill. But again, I mean, it can't get any worse. So find a role for him, because he, since the trade deadline, has been consistently your best producer. He has elevated Marcus Johansson's game since he got here. I know the advanced stats and like the shot metrics don't really favor it, but at the end of the day, production still matters a lot. And since Cahoon joined Johansson's line, they have produced. I mean, Johansson has points in 5 of his last 6 games, because I believe he picked up the primary assist on Victor Olofsson's goal. So he's gotten points in 5 out of his last 6 games and has 5 points since Cahoon joined the team. So Ralph Kruger's player usage is extremely frustrating, to cut a long-winded rant, and Cahoon is pretty much the prime example. Dahlin also was very underutilized in that game, and I don't even want to talk about the fact that him and Miller played less than 20 minutes while every other defenseman played more than 20 minutes, because that can't ever happen.
Especially for how well he was playing, too. It wasn't like he was earlier in the year where he was struggling at times. Dahlin looked really good last night, so he definitely...
He had 2 assists. He was... I mean, again, production doesn't mean everything. I understand that, but Rasmus Dahlin is your blue-chip franchise cornerstone defenseman, and this is his second coach. And I get it. Last year he was an 18-year-old rookie. This year he's still only 19. I get that, but I just don't know how a coach could look at it and be like, you know what, Brandon Montour, Rasmus Ristolainen, you guys played 23-plus minutes. Dahlin, you can have 17. I don't get it.
And to add on to that, he tied his assist total for all of last year already.
Passed it.
Yep. So
passed it, actually.
Yeah, tied and passed it yesterday because he had 2 assists. So There you go. But again, guys only going to get better, and you give him more ice time, that's going to be better for him developing. It's not like Ristolainen, where you give Ristolainen over 20 minutes, he seems to play worse than if you gave him less than 20 minutes. Dahlin is going to be your cornerstone guy, like you said. He's going to be the guy logging the most time on the back end. He's going to be your Drew Doughty, logging 28 or 29 minutes probably in his prime. So you kind of want to prepare him for that now. Again, as a 19-year-old, as a defenseman, it's still really hard to even play in the NHL at that age and be as consistent as he's been. Obviously, he's had his ups and downs, but for him to be at this level already as a 19-year-old defenseman, it's one of the bright spots for Buffalo moving forward here.
Oh, 100%. Like, I mean, I get it. Earlier in the year, you were trying to hold down those leads. You were 9-1-2 to start the season or whatever you were, but he's the reason. There's a reason he was called the Connor McDavid of defensemen, and that he was the consensus first overall pick, because the guy who went second, Andrei Svechnikov, is a hell of a player, but Dahlin was considered head and shoulders above, better than him. So is he only 19? Yes. Does he still make mental gaffes here and there? Yes. But I don't know how you could just look at Montour and Ristolainen and think, you know what, they need to be ridden 23, 24 minutes a night. And it's even worse is they play together, and those two were the ones who were on the ice when that puck bounced in off Montour's skate and into the net. I'm pretty sure it hit off Ristolainen's skate before it hit Montour, so it was a double doink. That's just a perfect summary of their season. But for some reason, I think Ristolainen's had 5, maybe 6 coaches, and they all just seem to think, you know what, I can fix this guy. 25 minutes a night, he can still play. He can't. He just can't.
We saw his soccer skills on hand yesterday. He had two pucks that he just kind of kicked. I don't know if Ralph Kruger brought that over from Southampton or what, but that was kind of interesting.
The one shift, it was perfect. Someone tweeted out a video. It's like, this is the epitome of Rasmus Ristolainen. He threw an absolutely amazing hit in the defensive zone, recovered the puck, had so much time, and instead of making a nice breakout pass, just blindly threw it up the boards.
Was that where he destroyed Garrett Hathaway behind the net?
Yes, exactly the play I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah, that was, and then, like, one just good play, just no, it's like, he can't go on a streak of good plays. It's like, good play, bad play, but...
Yeah. So like I said, am I clamoring for Dahlin to play 27 minutes a night? No, but come on.
Eventually he will. Eventually he will get to that point.
17 minutes a night for your most dynamic defenseman.
Yeah.
And probably your best defenseman as of late. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah. And
him and Miller have been really good together when they're on the ice together.
Yeah, or when Miller's not in the press box.
Yeah, and again, Miller only played 15 minutes. Another thing that I try not to, again, his player usage frustrates me, and it just, there's so many examples of it, but whatever.
We're tying it back to Cahoon here. Like you said, in 5 games for the Sabres, he has 3 points. He's actually a +2, considering on this team where they've gone 1-4 in those 5 games. He's a +2. I mean, I'll take that. But it's ice time: 13:05, 13:31, 7:16 against Pittsburgh. We already talked about that. 11:54 and 14:57. So for a guy with those types of stats to be putting that up with that little ice time, it just goes to show how great of a pickup this was for Jason Botterill. And again, the disconnect there, wishing that Ralph Kruger would use him more.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's so frustrating because I do think that was actually a very good pickup by Jason Botterill, and he actually is producing, but he's producing with limited ice time. I mean, imagine he actually had a legitimate top 6 role on this team. I know he is playing on the second line, but he gets no special teams time, so he doesn't really have a full-on top 6 role. Imagine if he did, maybe his production is even better. I mean, there's no reason to believe that it wouldn't be, so I don't know. We'll see what happens with the remaining 14 games of the season, but
it looks promising from what he's been giving us, despite his lack of ice time. 3 points in 5 games and a +2 rating. Pretty solid for this team, I would say.
Absolutely.
And we're going to take our last commercial break on the show today, guys, and wrap up with a little Sabres prospect update. So we'll be right back here on the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Nestled in the heart of beautiful Ridgeway, Ontario, the Ridge Filmhouse offers up films celebrating diversity, integrity, and pure entertainment. Join us for a quaint movie-going experience complete with an in-house bar, luxury seating, and carefully curated films. Join us for a cinematic experience that focuses on comfort and quality. Our films are carefully selected to fit our specific mandate, screening films that the larger cineplexes won't. Each month, our 10x15 screens show you the best in independent, foreign, classic, and second-run films. The Ridge Filmhouse is also available for private screenings, parties, and festivals. Come and discover hidden gems or rediscover the classics one more time. Located at 320 Ridge Road in Ridgeway, www.ridgefilmhouse.com, or call 289-303-8367 for availability and showtimes. The Ridge Filmhouse, a truly unique movie-going experience. J&L Flooring is a Niagara-based specialty flooring and design company. They take great pride in providing elite customer service and support. They are a specialty flooring and decor boutique shop with a beautiful showroom, great pricing, and a wide variety and truly unique selection of products. All their products are environmentally friendly and responsibly produced, so you can feel great about your flooring choices. Their goal as a local business is to build authentic relationships based on honesty and integrity that they foster with respect and authenticity. Offering unique and wide range of quality products presented by a knowledgeable and patient team, they connect with their customers to simplify the process to make their life easier and to make their homes beautiful. Visit them at 4424 Montrose Road, Niagara Falls, or find out more at jnlflooring.com. Open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 5 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. 905-358-3299 J&L Flooring. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill is located on the top of Clifton Hill and just a 5-minute walk from the majestic Niagara Falls. It is conveniently nestled in the heart of the tourist district. A family-owned and operated business, the Spicy Olive opened its doors in 2003 and has since been established as an authentic and unique Italian restaurant and bar. Its rustic ambiance and time-worn finishing provide a warm and inviting dining experience. Offering an array of delicious dishes, they specialize in authentic Italian cuisine, homemade sauces, fresh ingredients, and consistently provide a strong foundation on which they build their menu. As night falls, the Spicy Olive shifts to a lively lounge where dancing, martinis, and live music come together to make a perfect evening. Let Spicy Olive host your next function, birthday, private event, bridal, or baby shower. For more than 15 years, they have served not only their dedicated locals, but customers from all over the world with authentic Italian food and only the best in live entertainment. Located at 5026 Center Street, just off the historic Clifton Hill in Niagara Falls. They're open daily at noon till 10 p.m. and till 2 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. Call 905-371-2323 for reservations and special events. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill. You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network. Alright guys, welcome back to the final segment of today's Niagara Lowdown Sabres edition right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Cappy and Austin back with you here, and we're going to finish off with a little Sabres prospects update here. So, Austin, take it away with your new client there, Matej Pekar.
Yeah, so I mean, Matej Pekar, he's been on a tear, really. I mean, if you look at just his Sudbury production alone, he's got 34 points in 25 games. That almost matches his season total from the year before, where he played only 33 games with Barrie. He had 36 points, so he's having a really nice year. We both cover the Ice Dogs, so obviously we were talking about the playoff race and everything, and he had a 1+4 effort against Kingston. So that had playoff implications for the OHL, and that just adds to what he's been doing. He's been on an absolute tear as of late. I don't know what he's going to be at the NHL. I assume he'll be in the AHL next year. So for a team starved for forward prospects, Pekar is one guy that you have to look at because, there's limited options, and you have to be pretty happy with his production as a 4th-round pick.
Absolutely. And if I can just say quickly, we'll see him again next Saturday. Sudbury travels to Niagara to play against the Ice Dogs, and I believe you'll be in attendance for that game?
That is the plan as of right now, yeah.
Okay, so he will definitely be getting another hat trick. It seems like when his agent Austin is in town, he scores at least a hat trick against Niagara. So we'll have to see if he continues that streak going. But
I also want to add one more thing, because I did talk about Pekar's game, and people said, I want his center. Just so people do know, he's not playing with Quinton Byfield anymore. So this production isn't solely because he's playing with Quinton Byfield. He is doing this playing with Sudbury's second line. He's playing with Blake Murray, and I forget who his center is. But yeah, he's not doing this solely based on Quinton Byfield's back. So people do realize Pekar is doing a lot of this himself. He is driving play. It's not just because of Quinton Byfield.
And that game in Niagara where he had the 3 goals, 1 assist, Byfield wasn't even playing in that game. So
yeah, and the game that he got 1+4 on Sunday, he was not on Byfield's line too. So
yeah, Byfield, I believe, had 1 assist that whole game. So
exactly,
it's not just being carried by another player. In his case, he's definitely driving play. And for Sudbury now, he's up to 34 points in 25 games. He's at 1.36 point a game average with the Sudbury Wolves, so he's definitely had a nice fit there, going to a team that's going to be most likely the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference for the Ontario Hockey League.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that 2 seed will be a pretty good advantage for him, and hopefully he goes on a deep playoff run. I know if he does exit the first round, I mean, they will bring him up to Rochester, so I'm torn because obviously I would not like to see Pekar's OHL team lose, but it would also be cool to see him in Rochester and see what he can bring to the professional level. So it's a bit of he's a player to watch this year, and I believe Dylan Cousins as well, but I think Lethbridge has more of a chance of going deep than Sudbury does. So I believe Pekar will definitely probably be in Rochester at some point this year.
And you said it, Dylan Cousins. What do you got on him playing for Lethbridge?
I mean, there's what else? He is the number one forward prospect in the entire organization. I mean, I'm sure there's still hope for Casey Middlestat, but when you look at Dylan Cousins and if you look at his game, I know people got a little bit cautious. He put up 9 points for the World Juniors, and people were like, well, Casey Middlestat, but you really have to watch them play to break down their game, because Casey Middlestat was a pure skill guy. He relied on his talent to be better than everybody. If you look at the stuff that Dylan Cousins does well, it's little things that you don't notice. He's a micro stat darling, and what I mean by that is he is so good in transition. He's good at entering the offensive zone with control of the puck. He's good at getting to those dirty areas, the prime scoring locations. He's good at making those passes to those areas. So those little things translate to the pro game, as well as his solid production. I mean, his production has gone up every year in the WHL from 53 points, 84 in his draft year, which is super impressive, to now only 51 games into the season, he's got 85 points, which is a career high for him. So you can allow yourself to be excited. I'm a little bit torn. We talked about this because as of right now, we'll see if there is a new agreement struck between the CHL and the AHL, but he's either in the NHL next year or he's in the WHL. And
it's unfortunate.
At this point, it's unfortunate because at this point he has to be in the NHL, because I just see zero benefit to him being sent back down to Lethbridge for a fourth season to do what? To just light it up again?
To have 140 points? Like, at what point?
Yeah.
Like, that's not really going to help him.
No, exactly. So at this point, he should have probably got a 9-game trial out of camp this year. I firmly believe that. It would have been really nice to see how he looked. But he will be in the NHL next year. That's how I feel. I don't know. Again, it's not guaranteed, but he's likely going to be in the NHL next year. I don't know what role he'll have, but he's going to bring an element to the Sabres that they're lacking. He's big, he's strong, he can skate, and he can score. It's what Buffalo lacks. I mean, we'll see where they slot him in if he's on the roster next year. But I do think if used properly, again, going back to Ralph Kruger's not really good at using players, so that's what's got me iffy. But if Cousins is used properly next year, I think he can have a positive impact on the Sabres roster.
I think I could see him more as a winger just in his first year. Obviously, it's hard going into the NHL in your first year and being a center. We obviously saw that with Casey Middlestat, how that really hurt him having to start at center and not being ready for that role. But I think Cousins is probably a better, like you said, two-way player than Middlestat was. He was a 7th overall pick for a reason, and he's really showing that he could be, the Sabres' second-line center in the future behind Jack Eichel. But it's going to take some time, and unfortunately, because they can't go to Rochester, which you'd love to see him play a year in Roch first next year to have him develop down there, but it's just not possible with the way that the CHL rules work. But 85 points in 51 games, 1.67 point per game. What else more can you say? It's just hopefully it's a long playoff run in the WHL for Lethbridge, because we'd love to see what Cousins can do in big games.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and people also forget that he did miss a lot of time because he played for Team Canada at the World Junior, so his production would probably be even more. He sits right now 5th in the WHL in scoring, and that's with missing all that time during the World Juniors.
And we touched on him a little bit, but Casey Middlestat down with the Rochester Americans obviously probably should have been that for the first few years in the league, but we could talk about that for days on end. He currently sits with 24 points in 35 games with Rochester. What have you liked from Middlestat down in Rochester with the Amherst?
I've liked a few things from Middlestat. I mean, he's got those puck skills, I mean, he's so good with the puck on his stick. The production is, again, the AHL is not an easy league for people to score points in. I completely understand that. The production is starting to worry me a little bit. Not a lot, but it is starting to worrying me enough to the point where if Botterill is gone and a new GM comes in, I think he tries to sell high on Middlestat while he still can. I think if Botterill's here next year, they'll give him some more time, but he's starting to approach the Alex Nylander territory where he was a really high skilled, talented player, did not come in and light up the league. I mean, he had 25 points in his rookie year in the NHL. Not terrible. This year, obviously, the production was not there in the NHL. The Sabres had to send him down. He's looked really good at times in Rochester, but the consistency isn't there. I mean, 24 points in 35 games, that's not bad. It's not terrible for a young kid in his second professional season, but
you definitely want more.
I'm starting to not sour on him, but I'm starting to. The panic button is out of its case. Let's just put it like that when it comes to Casey Middlestat.
Yeah, you definitely want more production. And again, a kid that had just come out of playing high school, and they basically signed him just so that they wouldn't lose him in a Jimmy Vesey or Cal Peterson type fashion, where he went to college for 3 years and then just didn't sign and became a free agent and left for nothing. So I think it was one of those situations where they didn't want to get into that. But again, at the same time, he probably should have started in Rochester to begin his career. And we saw the first 2 years in Buffalo just really, really hindered his development. And now he's trying to find his game back again down with Rochester. And it's kind of like you're starting over from square one again, and it's like an 18-year-old kid starting his first year.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, 24 points in 35 games isn't. It's not like it's not terrible. It's just not what you expect from a guy with the amount of skill and the draft hype that Casey Middlestat garnered. So it's obviously, like I said, it's the panic button's out a little bit. I'm not ready to give up on him yet, but I do firmly believe that if there's a new GM in here, they might look at him and be like, I can still sell pretty high on this guy. Kind of like Botterill did this year with Alex Nylander. Botterill didn't draft Nylander, and he gave him a little bit of time, realized, hey, it's not really going to work out, got Henry Jokiharju for him. So I think if a new GM's in here, there could be a very similar situation developing with Casey Middlestat. But if he is here in the organization next year, it's a big summer for him. He's got a lot to prove. So maybe a more motivated Casey Middlestat can still, people do develop. I mean, it sounds like I'm talking about a veteran here. He's only 21 years old. People do develop a little bit later than they do, like a Jack Eichel who's amazing at 18. So it's not time to give up on him yet, but he is now approaching that high risk prospect where a new GM could come in and say, okay, I'll sell him high while he still has some value.
And again, he's going to need a contract at some point too. So he's definitely going to want to have to get better in order to get a raise on his payday there from his entry level deal.
Well, his entry-level deal expires at the end of this year, too, so
yeah.
He is due a contract this summer, so we'll see. It'll be an interesting situation with him.
Yep. If they obviously have to tender him, but it'll be interesting to see if they would even offer him a long-term contract, or if somebody comes in with a low offer sheet or something like that, or who knows. We'll talk about that when we get into the off-season stuff. But any other prospects you want to quickly touch on before we wrap up the show today?
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll touch quickly on him. You mentioned him earlier. The Finnish kid, Arttu Ruotsalainen, He's now got a career high in league play. He's got 43 points in 44 games this season with Eels. That's good because last year he had 42 points in 59 games. So his point production is up. His assists are way up. He looks pretty good. I think he can literally be a third-line scoring winger in the NHL, which is definitely what the Sabres need. I mean, anytime you can get scoring on any of your bottom six lines, it's positive. Is this kid going to come and light the world on fire? No, obviously not. Obviously an unfortunate situation with him where he was eligible to go back to Finland and didn't want to play in the AHL, so it was kind of NHL or Europe. So hopefully next year they bring this kid into the organization. Maybe they can convince him to stay in Rochester if they have to, but I'm hoping that, with all the forwards coming off the books and a less than ideal free agent crop, that we can see some turnover in the bottom six, guys like Jimmy Vesey and all them out the door and replaced by some young guys who bring something different, like a Ruotsalainen and a Dylan Cousins. Maybe there's something there. But Ruotsalainen has been very impressive in Finland this year. I mean, he's been a little bit streaky, but his point production is there, and that's what you want to see from a kid like him.
It'll be interesting to see next year if he comes over to North America and where they would slot him. I would assume it would be with Rochester, but like you said, with the high turnover on the bottom six forward group, you never know if he cracks the roster at a training camp.
Yeah, he had a tough camp last year, and again, with that clause in his contract where it was basically, hey, if I don't make the NHL, I'm going to go back to Finland because, he is Finnish and, he's played pro hockey over there at the highest level, so why not go do that again? He's looked good this year, but yeah, I mean, we'll see what he looks like in camp this year. I mean, he's only 5'8", but he's 182 pounds, so he's not like Marco Rossi territory where he's 5'8" and kind of undersized in terms of weight. So We'll see what he does over the summer. He's had a good year in Finland, and like I said, I mean, don't expect a lot from him. He's an undrafted free agent from Europe, but if you can put him on the third line and he can give you 15 goals, you'll take that to the bank all the time.
Definitely been a pleasant surprise, 43 points in 44 games, like you said. So basically a point a game in playing in the La Liga, so it's definitely not a pushover league. So good for Arttu Ruotsalainen. But with that being said, guys, that's going to wrap up today's episode of the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. We'll be back with you guys next week, hopefully talking about 2 or maybe 4 points against some division rivals in Montreal and Boston. One can only hope. But your source for North American sports coverage by sports fans, for sports fans, delivered to you right here from the Niagara region. As always, I'm one of your hosts of the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition, Cappy. You can follow me on Twitter at Kapoots13 with a Canadian Z, and you can also follow my co-host Austin. You can on Twitter at Austin_Broad, as well. Check out his articles on thechargingbuffalo.net. Very good reads. Always does great work for them as well. And a big thank you to all of our great sponsors who put us on and support the network, keep the show on the air, and you viewers out there for listening along with us and probably going through the same pain that we go through on a weekly basis and daily basis with this team and with Ralph Kruger's choice of line combinations and choice of who to play longer minutes than anybody else on the team. But this has been the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition on the Armchair GM Sports Network by sports fans, for sports fans. We'll see you next week.
See you next week, guys.